So thank you. I was asked to give a short presentation about the research project that we are trying to develop, I would say. So first of all, I would like to thank you all for inviting me here. And it's very interesting to meet all of you, and I think the previous presentations were really exciting. This one will be also a bit different, I would say. So, and it will focus on data that we have collected in this project. So I'll tell you a bit about this project. This is, by the way, maybe not the typical Swedish family. It's maybe better symbolizes how things are in the department sometimes, not at the moment. Okay, so why are we interested in family research? I mean, there are lots of arguments to do research in families, not only in Europe but also around the world. And to start with the last point here, family is fundamental in child welfare work all over the world, I would say. I mean, it is sort of self-evident to say that. And family is still, question mark, a fundamental institution. I think most of us would agree that it is still a fundamental institution in society. But the interest is also based on what's going on now in terms of trends and so on. And we can see that there are changes in family structures. And these changes create demands, of course, on policies and practices. And I will say a few words about these demands. But also the other way around, that policies affect families. I mean that when we change the policy, it affects family behavior. One example is, for example, in Sweden, where we had we changed the child allowances many years ago, and this led to an increase in the number of children per woman. I mean, you can actually see that happen. So this is just one example, and there are, of course, many other examples as well. And I think that the relatively high fertility rate in Sweden, for example, is a result of the system, the parental leave, daycare, children's daycare, etc., etc. So those policies affect behavior, I would say. Now, family diversity, family changes. The family is something else today than it was like 10, 20 years ago. There are researchers in Sweden who say that there is something going on with the family, but we really don't know where it's going. And some will talk about the network family as a new concept, but also all these types of family or categorization of family are available or visible in the literature. We have the nuclear family, the traditional family, the extended family, multi-generational, unmarried cohabitation, lone parenthood, and reconstituted families is also a concept that is emerging and increasing in the whole of Europe. It's quite a dramatic increase in how you have divorces and then we have reconstituted families. Makes things more complicated, especially when you have children from different families. And this LGBTQ families, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer families. This is also a new concept that's coming up. I talked about this in Bulgaria and in Lithuania, and there was actually one person who left the room. This was a bit taboo. One-person households is very common. I think it's the most common household type in Sweden today, but one person living alone. And then we have the living apart together, the LAT type of family where you actually, maybe you're married, but you decide to have households on your own for different reasons. And then we have also an increasing category, transnational and commuting families. So families with members in different nations, or families that commute for work, mainly. So these are sort of challenges to policies and practices that we need to deal with in social policy and social work. So, having said this, I will go over to the project that we are developing, and it's mainly Siv Oltedal who is here and I who have tried to lead this project, but there's a lot of people in this room who are engaged in this project also. And we try to expand it. We don't have any real funding to this actually, so it's something that we do in our spare time instead of being out in the sun or so. But the idea was, of course, that the IRSES project is understanding and supporting families with complex needs, that Nathan is the head of here. That we saw that it created a possibility to do comparative research, to have some kind of standardized data collection, since we will be traveling in this project. We will go to Latin America will come to Europe, and we can do kind of similar data collection if we want to, and we wanted to do that. So we decided to create a project, and the aim is basically, very similar to the IRSES project, how social workers work with families but then in particularly child welfare in different contexts. We want to know how family is constructed and understood in relation to professional practice, and also we talk about gender and generation, and how the conceptions of family vary across different contexts, and also related to institutionalized family policies in different countries. So these are the general aims, and I will not be able to respond to these, of course, because the project is sort of started, but we have not really analyzed data that deep yet. Data collection and data analysis, this is the basic strategy. We create focus groups. We would like to have at least 2 in every country. And these focus groups with social workers or people who know a lot about this field, they will discuss a constructed case, a standardized vignette, we could say, case. I will tell you a bit more about that. When the focus group are finished, we transcribe them, we translate them into English, and we place them in a shared folder in the system, so anyone in our network can access files from all the countries, and we will try to publish analysis together with different partners in this project also. So all this is almost ready now to start, I would say. We have the system. The case vignette, we talked about this yesterday in parts of this group, and people wanted to know more about the vignette. It's too long to present here, of course. But it is a vignette that starts with asking the social workers how they understand family in their country and how they would present it to a foreigner coming to the country. And I think this has created a lot of interesting material, only this question. And then we move over to the case, which is a girl, 14-year-old, Maria, who comes to the school counselor. She tells her that she's 6 months pregnant, and then the story goes on. That the father of the child is a 16-year-old boy, that Maria lives in a family where there's violence from her father, and so on. So I don't think I will go into all details. And having said that, the group starts discussing what advices would you give to this social worker or counselor before the next time he or she meets Maria. And then this vignette goes on with 2 more phases, when Maria is 16 and has a lot of problems, and when she becomes 18 and has sort of come back to life and wants to take care of her child. So what will they do then? So the social workers discuss this, and they come up with solutions and activities and strategies and so on. So this is basically the vignette. And it's translated to Spanish, and it's been used in Finland and in Russia. Are there any other languages? No, Norwegian and Swedish, of course. Yeah. So we have some methodological issues. One is related to this world map, the upside-down world map, and it's how to avoid Eurocentricity. This was one comment from one of our partners, that it seems like this case is a bit it's constructed in the European context, and maybe it is. Maybe we have some not problems, but there are some indications of that. On the other hand, we have really developed the vignette together with people in the partnership here. So we have had a lot of influence from Latin America, from Australia, and from South Africa, and so on. So we have tried to construct a vignette that works as good as possible in different contexts. It needs to address problems and context that social workers can recognize. But I mean, there are words in this vignette that sort of provokes the participants. Supported housing. We have no such thing as social housing in Sweden, but there is a lot of that in the rest of Europe. So what is supported housing? They start asking, what do you mean? And another one is also the school council. What is that? I mean, it's not. There are not school social workers or school counselors in all countries. So we need to ask the group to try to recognize if there was a school counselor, what would happen and so on. It has to be designed so they take it seriously, and this problem, of course, to balance between vagueness and concreteness, and concreteness creates its problems that I mentioned. Being too vague can lead to that the group drifts away in their discussions. So, since I have not so much time, I will jump over some of the issues, I think. But I would like to point to one thing here. I mean, it's of course important to have a similar procedure in all the countries. And I see now when I look into the transcriptions that we have had some different ideas of how to transcribe. So we need to be more clear about how to do this. But it's not really a problem. It's just that we need to be clearer. So findings, and this is very preliminary. I mean, we have not really had time to do any deeper analysis. This is just to show what kind of information we get from these focus groups. And on the left side we have the dimensions. I don't know if you see these. Is it possible? So dimensions like what kind of perspective seems to dominate in the transcriptions. Well, it seems that Sweden, and I also added Norway here because some of the data comes from Norwegian vignettes, seems to be a more individualized child perspective. They talk about the child perspective, but they talk about the child. But looking into Argentina and the Cuban vignettes, it's much more child and family or child in family perspective. So it's a child perspective, but it's always seemed to be connected to the child in the family. It's a difference, but maybe I don't know how important it is. The case as such, I mean, the Swedish social workers say that, well, this is unusual, and some say that it's not completely unusual, it can happen. The Icelandic group that works with this, they say, we never have cases like this. But it's a small country. And Argentina and Cuba say, this is common, it could happen, could be quite typical in a way. The extended family, we talked about that a bit yesterday in our group, and I think in this material it's clearer, I think, that the extended family, I mean, here we have the baby, the mother, and her family, her mother and father. This is sort of one family system, but going outside, I mean, like the grandfathers and grandparents, would be central, I would say, in Cuba and maybe also in Argentina, but very invisible in the Swedish vignettes. So this is not the people you turn to. I mean, in this case, we say that these people live far away, so they are not easily accessible, but still they are mentioned. I could go on. The father's role, I mean, I think it's called Pedro in Argentina and Peter in Sweden and so on. There are some different names. He's sort of out of the picture in the Swedish material. And it's a lot of discussion both in Sweden and Norway that this is a criminal act. He has had sex with a 14-year-old girl. That's illegal. So they have a lot of discussion whether they should report to the police and so on. And this is not at all in focus in Argentina. And the father's role, they say in Sweden, well, maybe later he can come in. In Argentina, Cuba, and Lithuania also, he should take his responsibility, and they also talk about engaging his family in this process. So there are different ideas in this. Gender, not so pronounced as far as I've seen. in Argentina, Cuba, matriarchal, strengthen the child-mother-grandmother relationships is very visible. I mean, you see, it's the women who are engaged. Of course, the case is a girl and a daughter, but it's only the grandmother. Okay. So, and also relationship mother-child is more emphasized in Argentina and Cuba than in the Swedish material. And protection from violence is important in both places, I would say. So these are some patterns, and I could go on. I think I'll pick some of the maybe more important ones. With intervention strategy here, we talk about supporting this girl, Maria, in Sweden. Out-of-home placement comes up as quite early in the discussion. Protection from violence, of course. I think it was in the Argentinian material, mediation was very a common word, emphasizing motherhood. In the Cuban case, community came up, to work with the community in general around this family. And okay, the resource context varies also. In Argentina and Cuba, they say, well, we have programs, but we don't have resources. And in Sweden, they say, we throw all kinds of things in to help her. I mean, that's with no restrictions in terms of resources. And also strategies in communicating. And we see a similar thing here is that resources are scarce, so our possibilities are quite limited. I mean, centers are created and programs are elaborated. So these are examples of similarities also, but differences between the two contexts. So we will then continue to analyze this further on. So I will just say thank you.